Right, we'll get started then. In terms of the plan for the session today, I am going to, my name's Abby Ryan, I'm the Development Manager for West Midlands Urban Community Homes, and I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of an introduction to community-led housing, an overview of what it's all about and what it might look like. And then we're joined today as well by our guest speakers, Linda and Eddie, who both lead community-led housing organisations. They're going to tell you a bit about their experiences. I'll introduce them as we go. And then we'll open up for some questions and discussion at the end of the session. So you'll find that you're muted at the moment. So if we can ask that you please just remain on mute while the speakers are speaking. If you have any questions as we go, then please type those into the chat box. We'll pick them up at the end and probably ask you to sort of unmute and ask your question verbally at that point, so we can have a bit of a conversation at the end. So without further ado then, I'll get started and I'll introduce you to other speakers as we go. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that slide okay? Can I get a thumbs up or a wave? Yeah, nods, good. Okay, great. So what is community-led housing is probably a good place for us to start, just to make sure we're all on the same page. This is a sort of nationally agreed definition that we use. There's 3 core principles of what community-led housing is. The first is that open and meaningful community participation and consent takes part throughout the development of the homes. So communities don't actually have to initiate the scheme or build the homes themselves necessarily, though lots of them do. Either way, partnership working is quite common. The second principle is that community group or organisation owns, manages or stewards the homes in whichever way they decide to. And there's generally a presumption that they'll take a long-term formal role. So these are democratic organisations that govern how to manage the assets and the homes for the long term. The third principle is that the housing development is of true benefit for the local community, a specific group of people or both. So it could be local community or some sort of community of interest or specific group, and that the benefits are clearly defined and legally protected in perpetuity. So that's what we mean when we talk about community-led housing. It can start in a variety of different ways, as I mentioned. So generally kind of 3 main ways that a community-led housing project gets started: through grassroots activism. So a group of individuals get together, coalesce around a campaign, decide that they want to build some different homes for their community. The second is existing community organisations. So lots of these community anchors, community development trusts, all sorts of community organisations are quite well placed to do this because they are already embedded in their local community. They have kind of governance structures in place already, and lots of them are in a position, and we're seeing more and more now kind of branching out into housing as a way of diversifying their activity and income and better supporting their communities. And the third way that a project can start is it could be initiated by a developer. And I mean developer in the broadest sense there. So they could be a local authority who are building homes, a housing association, or a private developer, for example, and they might decide that they want to build some homes that benefit the community in perpetuity, and they want to find founding members of a community group to take on a stewardship role for those. Why get involved? Community-led housing is really about people imagining the places that they really want to live and creating those aspirational homes and neighbourhoods for themselves. So it's about the houses, obviously, but the result is about much more than the homes themselves as well. It's about vibrant and resilient communities. And we know that we need that now more than ever after the year we've had. So just a few of the benefits up on screen here. In terms of the houses themselves, really being able to protect that affordability for future generations, not just the initial residents of the homes. There's an opportunity for the design of the homes and the way that their space is set out and the amenities they provide to be really responsive to community needs. Lots of schemes like to incorporate communal spaces to eat, socialise and share amenities. And fundamentally, these organisations bring people together to make decisions about their homes and their neighbourhoods and create connections between them. So you can imagine the kind of whole host of benefits that communities reap from those things. And finally, sustainable local economies is the third one here. By responding kind of to the needs of the community, it supports them to continue living locally and therefore support local businesses, schools, etc. Lots of community organisations are keen to build homes with a very high kind of sustainability spec to tackle fuel poverty and also our climate emergency. And finally, community-led housing can be really good at supporting local kind of skills development and jobs creation and supply chains in construction projects. So we think there are lots of reasons to get involved. Hope you'll agree. I'm going to just share a handful of examples here to give you an idea of what a community-led housing project might look like, because it can take all sorts of shapes and forms. It can also operate across any tenure, so that could be home ownership, some sort of shared ownership, or market affordable or social rent levels. So it really just depends what the community wants and needs. So the first photo here on the left is from Lilac in Leeds. Now this is a co-housing project which built 20 new build eco homes. It has a common house and other shared facilities and green spaces. This one is also the first mutual home ownership scheme, which is quite an innovative collective approach to home ownership, where individuals pay into a collective mortgage based on their income levels. So that's a really innovative model. The other picture on the right here is from Canopy, which is also in Leeds. Now they are using kind of empty homes as a way of providing self-help housing for homeless people. So the council, the city council in Leeds, has transferred or leased empty and derelict properties to Canopy, and then volunteers from the local community, along with people experiencing homelessness, do the practical work to renovate and refurbish the homes to a good standard, and they then provide decent, affordable accommodation for people who are homeless. Another couple here, this illustrated map is from the Heart of Hastings Community Land Trust. So they formed as a response to fears about gentrification in the local area, and they wanted to use collective social investment to buy underused or disused properties and renovate them using local tradespeople and rent them out at rates that are capped to reflect local incomes, so they're affordable to local people. The map is of the Trinity Triangle High Street Heritage Action Zone, which is a 4-year regeneration programme supported by Historic England, where a variety of local stakeholders are kind of coming together to regenerate the built environment. The second photo on the right here is, oh, sorry, that was unintentional. Second photo on the right here is Bradwell CLT in the Peak District. Now the CLT here actually formed in response to an opportunity created by the planning policy. They acquired 12 new build houses from a private developer that were given to them at no cost as part of the Section 106 contributions from the developer, and that came about because those requirements were written into the neighbourhood plan that the developer had to contribute those affordable homes to the local community, and the community land trust formed to take those on. A regeneration example, you might have heard of Granby 4 Streets CLT in Liverpool. Now they operate in the Toxteth area, which was kind of destined for demolition after decades of underinvestment, but the local community wanted to protect the area, so they started gardening and painting their houses and the boarded up empty properties in the area. And they formed a community land trust again, which bought 10 homes from the council and used a really kind of participatory approach to transforming those empty derelict properties, and has won kind of multiple prizes and attracted plenty of investment. And a final example from me for now, this drawing is from Sturchley Cooperative Development. Now this is a mixed kind of living and working development that can be quite popular as well. So they're a group of local people in housing and worker co-ops. They're developing sustainable mixed use, 39 affordable flats, along with kind of new retail units on the ground floor, and those are going to house cooperative businesses like a bakery and a bike foundry and an art gallery. Sturchley recently got planning approval from Birmingham City Council for this scheme, so that was really good news for community-led housing in the West Midlands, and we're looking forward to this project kind of hopefully being built very soon. So in terms of the form that kind of your community group takes, you can see the possibilities are almost endless. It kind of depends on what you want to achieve and what the best way to do that is. So just included a few different models for community-led housing groups and organisations on screen here. There are lots of different ways to do things. There might be some creative combination of these things that works for your context. So we generally kind of say, come and talk to us about what you want to achieve, and we can advise on how best to do that. In terms of how you do it, again, there's no one correct way and no set rules. Groups kind of start in different places. You know, some of them have found a site already, and that's why the group kind of comes to be. Others still need to find one, and sometimes you move back and forward between these different stages. But this is just a really broad overview of kind of the different stages of the process that you go to deliver some community-led homes. The group bit is about setting up a new community group, or setting up, incorporating, establishing its structure, or realigning the ambitions of an existing community organisation towards community-led housing. The site bit is about finding some land or some buildings that you want to develop or refurbish. Doing some investigations on that site to make sure they're right for the scheme, and buying it at the relevant stage of the process. Plan is all of the kind of detailed design, planning, viability, business planning work that you might need to do to get ready to build or renovate homes, and maybe to secure planning permission if that's relevant for the project. Build is the building or renovating or refurbishing, and the live bit is moving in, occupying the homes, ongoing management of the homes, and that continued community stewardship. so we'll say a little bit more about our support at the end, but basically we have a kind of pool of advisors at West Midlands Urban Community Homes who can help to guide you through this process. And there are various forms of funding available from government and elsewhere as well, which we can advise on too. So without further ado, I'm going to pause there. Just put our email address and our website address up on screen there. I'll pop them in the chat as well, so you can easily refer to those. But wherever you are on your journey, if you're interested in community-led housing, then know that you can get in touch with us. But first, I am going to stop sharing my screen and hand over to Linda Hines, who is resident chair of Whitton Lodge Community Association and also a founding member of West Midlands Urban Community Homes and the vice chair of our board. And she's going to tell you about the Whitton Lodge story. So over to you, Linda.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. With the 3 bullet points that Abby showed on the presentation, the community activism was our starting point, because I've lived in Perry Common in Birmingham. It's Perry Common estate. I always say you live in on an estate because you're put there. That's how it used to be, but we've changed it, so we live in Perry Common now. So when we moved in, I moved in with my family. After about 12 years of living there happily, we heard that 900 of our homes had to be demolished. That was when the community activism started. I wasn't a part of it, didn't really want to be, because I got sort of a family to look after. So my first meeting was in 1991, so it's my 30th year this year. The community activism usually comes from, they say, a crisis, but it's usually something really that people feel really powerful about and wanting it to be better or different. So a residents' association was set up overnight. I again had nothing to do with that, but joined. And an idea of setting up a community association to oversee the redevelopment of Perry Common. You frighten me then, all I can see is myself now. So Whitton Lodge Community Association was formed in 1994 with a board of 12, but 8 of us are resident directors, so we live in the local area, and it was purposely true community-led. I always said there's only an apostrophe between resident-led or residents-led. And I think we were probably residents-led to start with, but we certainly found the power of community quite early on. To the really, I suppose, to the enthusiasm, you can't buy that, but you can give it away. So if somebody's got a good idea, it's worth its weight in gold. So the redevelopment started in 1994. Whitton Lodge was formed. We were formed to oversee the regeneration of Perry Common, but also to become a landlord. Perry Common was a huge estate, and it had to be phased into 7 phases. Those phases sort of went awry at the end, but and at the moment, Whitton Lodge Community Association own almost 200 properties. We wanted, as resident directors, we wanted to know everything. My goodness, we were sponges. We wanted to know the colour of the bricks, choose the colour of the bricks, learn how they were put together, and to the annoyance mostly of the developers, to be truthful, because they wanted to build from a design. But we knew what we wanted. We had a brilliant architect, but we didn't have any staff. And right up until 2010, we didn't have any staff. We either commissioned it or we did it ourselves. We soon learned that if you build a house and you don't provide, I call them the softer things to do, like open spaces, support when needed. That house doesn't really become a home. So we build homes now. We've actually delved into the empty homes projects, and we've got how many homes? We've bought off the open market and refurbished 9 and let them. Some of those, if I backtrack, we were set up as a non-registered housing provider. So it's the charity, which we are, is still not registered. We chose not to do that because initially, so we wouldn't have to pay a chief executive to run it, because you would have had to. So we thought, no, we can build another house with that. So we have 2 subsidiaries. One is a trading company, and the other one is a community interest company, and we're going through the registration of that community interest company to purchase more homes. So our general needs properties are, which is within the charity, are affordable rents. We delved into market rents because there's a need. There were many people coming onto our waiting list who actually didn't qualify for our affordable homes, but we're in a very, we're in the properties with really bad landlords. And so we've got 3 market rental properties. To be specific, I shied away from market rents because they've got a bad reputation, really. But not if you're a good landlord and those people need it and they're really happy. What we have done is I don't like the word community development. I know you have to use it in funding bits. So we set up a Flourishing Communities programme where we provide help with health and wellbeing support to our tenants and non-tenants. So the community that we encompass can come in and get that support as well. We do employment and skills training, and we do what we've called community life, which is actually having fun. The beauty of knowing where you live and overseeing the development is that a community organisation can try something that they're not quite sure it's going to work, as long as it's risk assessed. An innovation can flourish. We've got bungalows as a semi attached to a 3-bed house, and they said it would never work. It's worked beautifully, because if you don't try, how are you going to know it's not going to work? We celebrated everything, and I mean everything, because you have to have fun. One of our values is fun, because why would we do it otherwise? So when the last house was demolished, we had a party. When the first house was built, we had a party. And we choose, and this morning actually we've got a new empty homes property just been refurbished, and it's ready to let, and we've just offered it to a young mum with 2 children who's in temporary accommodation. And that's why you do it, because you make a difference to people's lives. We are going, as I say, with our community interest company, we're going through the registration process. It's been a little torturous, to say the least, but we hope we're going to be there, and that will allow us to access funding to buy more empty properties and refurbish them at affordable rent. So, I mean, I don't want to go on any more than that, because I think there's so much I could say, and often do. So if you really want to know more, I'm sure Abby would let you have my email address or the Whitton Lodge email address. So yes, thank you.
Thanks very much, Linda. And we'll, as I said, we'll have time for if anyone has questions for you at the end as well. So just a reminder, do pop your questions in the chat as we go if you'd like to, or you can save them up for Q&A time as well. Thanks, Linda. It's great to kind of hear the story of how Whitton Lodge has gone from strength to strength over the years, and grown into a really kind of sustainable anchor for the community, and you're now pursuing all sorts of new projects. So that's brilliant. Thank you. Next up, we have Eddie Morton, who leads Stourbridge Community Development Trust. He's working on a new community-led housing scheme that he'll tell you all about. And Eddie has recently joined the West Midlands Urban Community Homes Board of Directors as well. Over to you, Eddie.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Yes, so I'll just give you a bit of a background of my story and how I got to where we are. I'm a musician. I've been a musician for 40 years. It is scary when it comes on the screen like that. Yes, I've been a musician for about 40 years, ever since I left school. I've also been a community activist, working with all sorts of organisations for as long as I can remember, including Amnesty International, supporting a charity that works with street kids in South America, all sorts of things like that. About 20 years ago, I moved to Stourbridge, and we bought Katie Fitzgerald's, which is a music and comedy venue. And about 10 years ago, when we had the financial crash, it was a sea change to us, really, about how the world works and how it should work. And I got tired of kind of writing songs and campaigning, and decided 5 years ago I was going to try and actually do something positive to push back against what's happening in the world, which is increasingly for millions of people, it's unaffordable to live, whether that be rental or purchasing homes, and that's leading to the failure, really, or it will lead ultimately to the failure of our democracy and our way of life. So I saw this as a much bigger challenge than just housing. I formed a group in Stourbridge to look at the homelessness issue, and from that we formed Stourbridge Community Development Trust. And from that, through working through organisations, through locality and the National Community Land Trust movement, I came upon the idea of community-led housing, which 3.5 years ago I knew nothing about whatsoever. I'd never encountered it, but to me it kind of allied very closely with my view of how the world should be, and how life should be fairer and more equal. And I thought it was a great tool for to use to change the way people, the way our society is organised. So I found through political connections that I'd built a piece of land. So we were able to put in very quickly a community asset transfer request on a piece of land not far from where I live, with a view to starting a community-led housing project. At this point, we had no organisation around what we were doing, and I found Carl Taylor, who's also a member of our board, and I've worked very closely with Carl and locality and the National Community Land Trust and all sorts of people to kind of find out about community-led housing and what we could do. We managed to come up with a scheme that was able to access the government's community housing fund. So we got money to do an appraisal, design and planning, to work towards design and planning of what we proposed. And what we proposed was a car-free development that provides 11 affordable apartments with solar panels. We have a shared home working space, air source heat pumps, working with Accord. It'll be built to passive house standards. And basically it's a scheme that is designed to prove that affordable rent and affordable energy is a key driver in local economies and high streets. So what I've found as a business owner living in Stourbridge was, over the last 10 years, increasingly what has happened is that money is being extracted from local economies by large companies such as, well, we won't name them, but the idea of large developers and large companies, money is being extracted from local economies, and then we are having to prop up those losses through, you know, basically losses are being socialized. And we are saying that we need a new drive towards affordability of rent and energy. This will not only address the local economy, it will address the environment. So we're looking at, you know, a reduction in carbon emissions as well for our development. It's on a brownfield site. So that's the kind of nature of our project. And it's been a long road due to COVID, but last week we achieved planning permission, which was a major milestone. And now we can move towards building and rolling out that scheme. Now, alongside that, we've had to build the organisation that Linda has talked about. You know, the kind of organisation that can manage and be a landlord for this development. So we formed a community land trust, Stourbridge Community Land Trust, which is allied to Stourbridge Community Development Trust, but is a separate organisation. It's a community benefit society. It has now about 50 members, a board of 10 that meets monthly and makes decisions around how we're going to progress with this project, how local people can be involved, building the tenant base and all that sort of thing. So we've kind of done it slightly the other way around to Linda. We've grabbed hold of an opportunity and built an organisation around it. She built an organisation and then grabs opportunities as they go. So there are these different approaches. And in fact, I was talking to Mina at Locality about that. We kind of see ourselves as a more guerrilla approach, where we go into anything, plant a flag and kind of tell people to, you know, ally around it. And that's kind of my approach to things. We also, as the Trust, do a lot of other work allied to this. We have a community hub in the centre of Stourbridge that hosts the Repair Cafe. It hosts lots of environmental groups, women and toddlers groups. It sells art, music and books made in Stourbridge. We also are involved in a cohesion project in Lye. And we've just taken over community cinema in Kidderminster. And our kind of model, if you want to look up what we're doing, is based around the Mondragon Corporation. So we're kind of allying enterprise and revenue very strongly to the idea of social and community benefit. So we're operating on many different levels all at the same time, but all of it allied to the idea of community-led housing, which is basically to give those in the local community, even if they're renting, a sense of ownership that, again, Linda talks so eloquently about earlier. And only in that way can we build, you know, a society of equality and justice. And that's our kind of drive towards that. And what we see is that our little example, which is only 11 flats, is really an example that people that hopefully will provide tipping points for other people, certainly for councils, because we're in Dudley, and obviously West Midlands Urban Community Homes deals with 7 local authorities. And I can tell you, and I know Abigail will back this up, that the one local authority that doesn't respond so far very well, although they've approved our scheme, they still don't quite understand the idea of the power of community-led housing and how it can be, you know, if councils work with community groups in the way that they have in Birmingham and the way that we've seen in other areas of the country, the power of what could be rolled out by people is absolutely profound. We think it can be a profound change in the way we live our lives. And that's what drives me on. I adopt a can-do approach to everything. And again, I ally absolutely with Linda. You've got to make it fun, because a lot of what you do, you don't get any money for it. You sometimes don't even get the credit for it. You know, look at it as a kind of a challenge Annika, and be excited in the idea of what you can do. And that's what drives me on every day, to get up and attend these meetings and try to inspire people to do what we do. And I shall continue to do that for as long as I possibly can, because I think it's a fantastic way of communities taking control of their own lives again, and leading to good lives. So that's what we do. And we are open access. Anybody can ask us. Again, through Abby, you can get our email. We will happily help or provide any advice or tell you about our story, or how we did things, with no problems and no strings attached. So yes, thank you. There you go. Cheers.
Thank you, Eddie. Fantastic to have that inspiration as the sun's out and we start to emerge from lockdown, and to hear about what's driving you at Stourbridge, and what's possible, really. So thank you very much. We have just having a look at the chat now, so we're open for questions and answers and discussion now. So if you do have kind of questions, please pop them in the chat, and I'll kind of invite you to ask them one by one, if that's okay. So John Goodman, you had a question for Linda about registering. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Should be able to unmute now, I think. I'll ask you to unmute.
Right, yes, it wouldn't let me just now. No, that was fantastic. Thanks ever so much. It was just a little thing, really. Linda, you talked about registering. Can I just check?
Where's he gone?
Oh, did you hear that? No.
I did.
Sorry, John, slight technical hitch.
Yes, well, host is not allowing participants to unmute themselves. It
No,
says.
they're not.
But I am unmuted, aren't I? So I'll say it again. Linda, when you talked about registering, was that registering as a housing association?
Yes, it is. It is going through the registration process to become a housing association for our community interest company. The reason being that through our charity, which is the parent company, we can't access Homes England funding. So we've got to be a registered provider to get that funding. And so, yes, it is through registration, yes.
Thanks, Linda. We have a question. Barbara was asking if Dudley is Eddie's local council. Barbara, did you want to sort of expand on that question, or ask anything else about the sort of Dudley context? Let me see, Barbara H.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's just really because I think Dudley Council is Conservative led, isn't it? So that's what I was, I'm presuming that Conservative councils would be a lot more reluctant than Labour councils to support these sort of initiatives, which I think are brilliant. That's the reason why I asked it, really. But Eddie said it is dry. Thanks.
Can I just come in on that? What we found, I think this is again something we're trying to kind of we're working with people on, is it's important to understand the difference between the council and the councillors. What we found working with Dudley, we have been through 4 changes of council leadership since I put in community asset transfer request on that land. So it at every point there was a different view upon what we could or could not do. And I think what you'll find actually is that community-led housing it feeds both political views, really. It's kind of non-political in its politicalness, because if all parties understand what it can do is empower people, and that's good whether you're coming from a Labour standpoint or a Conservative standpoint, it's good for people. So I don't think it's a particularly a political position. It's more a systemic position with Dudley. Council officers don't yet understand what community-led housing is. They're kind of getting there, but really they should be invited to some of these meetings, but I'm sure Abby's invited people, but they generally don't engage very well at the moment. But we'll get them, don't worry.
Thanks, Eddie. Yeah, it's certainly, I think we certainly find community-led housing is a has kind of some, yeah, it is of interest cross-party, I think. So it's about kind of, yeah, understanding sort of the local context and what community-led housing can really offer in that context, I think. We have got a question from Leah in the chat as well. Leah, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Oh, we have technical difficulties.
Are people not able to?
Now you should be able to, I think, Leah.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
I was frantically trying to find the unmute. Yeah, thank you ever so much for the chats from everyone. It was really insightful for me. I have to admit, I didn't really know anything about community-led housing before this, which is why I came along. But I work with an organisation called WMUCH. So we're kind of focused more on health and social care services and finding out how best to support local communities through our organisation. But with this, obviously we work with lots of different people. And it'd be really interesting just to kind of find out, say if someone was interested in accessing community-led housing, what would be the best way to kind of go about that initially? Say if, you know, I'm not sure kind of how people would usually, I know how it's developed, it's normally a community-led kind of focus, but say if there was just an individual who contacted me and said, you know, I'd be interested in trying to get involved in it, how would that work?
Good question, thank you, Leah. So I suppose we're always happy to talk to interested individuals like that, and we kind of have, because we support community-led housing groups and organisations around the region, we kind of have an understanding of who's doing what. So if we know an existing kind of group or organisation in their area, then we can kind of send them make an introduction, and they can see how they can get involved. Or if you know, if there isn't much activity going on in their area at the moment, then yeah, we can just have a chat about what it's all about and offer a few pointers about how they might kind of get talking to some other local people who might kind of care about the same things and be interested in starting something together. Eddie, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, just from my experience, what just because there's a couple of requests around that, and I'm not saying this would apply for everybody, but what we did is we got involved in an action, a community action to stop a development, and that kind of so there was a local development. The council sold our local arts college to Persimmon. It was very close to where I live. It was not just a college, it was a little green space as well, in the middle of the old quarter in Stourbridge, and we got heavily involved in campaigning against that development. And what that did was build people in. We then were able to access people who were interested in the idea of housing, and we were able to kind of get debates going around that. So we just got involved in an action basically. And then proposed that there was an alternative. So we said, why are we doing this? Why don't we do this? And that brought out some people who were interested. That's what we did.
Abby, could I come in, please?
Please do.
I think we were born out of a crisis. It's usually, Eddie's right, it's usually when somebody wants to build something and you don't want it to happen. So a group of residents came to see me when their local playing fields had been given to redirected to housing. There was going to be houses built on there. So I put them in touch with the local MP, facilitated a meeting, then left them to it. They've now formed a trust, and there is going to be development, but included is the community space, the green space, and this trust will manage that. So there's a compromise. It's a negotiation rather than a confrontation now. And I think mostly, might be generalising, but I think mostly that's the way you get. But you almost need somebody in the middle, and that's where we can help as much to actually get the two parties talking rather than somebody's really angry. So I hope that made sense, but exciting stuff. So
no, thank you. I think I'm definitely going to take a few of your details down as well, because I'm based in Solihull. I think someone's put something in the chat as well about something specific to that area. But yeah, if I have any other questions, I'll definitely send them through. Thank you.
Thanks both. And I think that the other side of that is that a response to a plan is often a good call to action, but also response to other opportunities. So sometimes groups come about just because there's a site kind of sitting idle or underused, or it's a bit of an eyesore, and actually they'd like to do something about it. So yeah, different ways. There's a couple of comments just about becoming a registered provider of social housing to access funding that Linda mentioned. This is kind of getting into detail for when you're a bit further along in developing a plan, really. But yes, I think as John has pointed out, the reason that some community housing organisations are becoming registered providers now is to access Homes England's Affordable Homes programme, which is probably the biggest source of grant funding for affordable housing. At the moment, a lot of them will also kind of borrow finance from elsewhere as well. So that's not the only way to finance a scheme. It just depends kind of how your finances stack up and what grants you need or what money you might be able to borrow to make it work. And Kim, you had a question. Did you want to ask yours?
Thanks, Abby. I think to some degree it's maybe been answered already, and from things that Linda and Eddie have said, it sounds like we need to go around and create rumours about building new airports and huge housing estates.
Got it.
Yeah. But yeah, just to sort of say, I'm kind of attending today with John Goodman, Sarah Brooke Taylor from Warwickshire. We're very keen to. It seems a bit unfair, really, that the community-led housing has not unfair is the wrong word, but the community-led housing has taken off in other parts of the country in a way that it just hasn't in Warwickshire, and we're very keen to see it happen because of all the fantastic benefits that people have described. So it's just really whether anybody had any other thoughts about how we might try and engage with communities and seed what is obviously a very ground up sort of process. So it's almost a bit difficult to come at it from in a top down way. Comment that I think Eddie made was about, you know, local authority engagement is really the key here, and I just wondered whether you had any more thoughts about that. Yeah, as I say, it's difficult because in some ways the question I think has already been answered.
Yeah, I think, sorry, Linda, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I was just going to come in. I mean, we were involved with the local authority straight away, so because they transferred the land to Witten Lodge, so we had a lease on the land, so they have two places on our board, and we value them being there. And they are there because it was probably one of the first community asset transfers, although they don't say it is, but it was, they transferred the land. I think we do things in a, I'm trying to find how to put it without using language that's not appropriate, but I personally have, because we're unsalaried as directors, I think it gives you a power which you use well, not in the wrong way, but you can almost, mostly when we get people to visit us from the city council, if we haven't met them before, they expect a handshake, they listen to you, they go away and don't do anything. But I think personally, I talk to them like they're I want them as a friend, and so if I give an example, it was a real Sir Albert Ball, when he was leader of Birmingham City Council, he came on a visit because we needed him to come and see a site that we wanted as an asset transfer, and he came in 10 minutes late, went to take his coat off. I said, "Oh, you don't take your coat off, you're late, because we're going on a tour. We're going to show you a site. I'll make you a cup of tea when we come back." And so it's a normal conversation you would have with a friend, as opposed to, "Oh my God, they're above me." And I think there's an equal status that sometimes community members don't think they've got, and they have. They are an equal partner, and the council sometimes need reminding, and other organisations need reminding, but it's the way you do it, so it's not rude. And I found that lifts my state of the mind. It really does, because you know you're getting your point across, but it's not said in an antagonistic way.
Thanks, Linda. And from the perspective of the hub, we certainly see that as an important part of our role, to build relationships with local authorities and raise their awareness about what community-led housing can achieve, how it can help them to meet their priorities, and the different things that they can do to enable it. You need people, land and finance for community-led housing. So yeah, we kind of talk with them about the different things they might be able to do to help us get these schemes off the ground. And there is a bit of chicken and egg, where if you have some kind of an authority with a strategic objective, it encourages community groups to come forwards, and vice versa. If community groups start coming forwards, then encourages the local authority to do something strategic about it as well. So we're coming at it from both directions, I think. Eddie, did you want to add something on land there?
Well, land is the key, but what I'd say is a lot of it is politics, but trying to find out who the key players are, council and councillors, and as Linda says, you've got to kind of do a bit of glad handing and make them feel, you know, not. She's right. Don't undersell yourself. At the end of the day, it's all of our community, all of our world. We all have an equal part in it, but you do have to do a bit of kind of, you know, appreciate that you've got to navigate around those people, and it's finding out who they are really on the council, and which councillors are receptive and which aren't. And I mean that's I was able to do that because I was in the Labour Party at the time, and I kind of got very involved with the politics of it. So I knew who was interested, who wasn't, and how we could navigate that. And it's a bit of a kind of minefield, but if you can do it, it leads you into things. That's all I'd say. But it can be difficult.
I think it's really convincing them that there's a benefit for them.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yes.
It has to be a win-win situation.
In fact, if I could just say, we're involved with an action around saving a green space in Stourbridge, and a group has come to us as the CLT and said, "Can you help us with this?" And what it is the NHS is selling off a piece of land, and what I've said to them is exactly what you just said, Linda. You've got to prove that it's in their interest that they leave this land as green space. And I said, and there is methods you can use, basically by proving that social and community benefit has a financial value, and all you've got to do is go back to them and make their job easier. They want their job to be made easier, and if you do that, they'll support you, really.
Thanks, Eddie. Now it's 3 minutes to 1, so I'm aware that we're due to wrap up shortly. Just before we finished, I also wanted to introduce you to my colleague H, who's on the call. She's our service manager, and just ask her to say a little bit about the support we can offer H. So H is probably the person who'll be, if you kind of get in touch with us, she'll be the first person you have a chat with. H, over to you.
Yes, Abby. So hi everyone. Yes, I would be the one that said hi. If you are interested, if you're starting work, actually, if you have a group and you're starting work and you want some advice on where you should go and how far you've got, and generally some support, we do health checks for groups to identify what we think are the things that you should be looking at, and you can ignore that or take it on as the case may be. But we do that over a half day for you with one of our advisors, and then following that we give the series of recommendations and you can pick those up with us if you wish. But it's a good way of having a first chat about where you are, where you need to go, what you might have forgotten to do in your journey, and it's always good just to have a chat about what anyone's trying to do really, and try and point you in the right direction. So even if you're not a fully formed group and you just want to ask some questions, that's fine. Just send questions to the email address that Abby's posted, the hello at WMUCH.org.uk email address. I'm always happy to have a chat about what people want to do. Yeah, so I think that's broadly a new starter support process.
Absolutely, thanks H. And yeah, as H mentioned, even if it's just an inkling of an idea at this stage and you just want to chat to someone about it, yeah, we'd love to hear about. We can't have a full discussion with everyone right now, but we'd love to hear about why you joined the session and what you're thinking. So please do get in touch. We will circulate kind of recording and slides after the session. And I'll also share a little bit of information in that email. You can, because we're a community benefit society, we're member led. So if you're interested in getting involved in the community led housing movement, you can apply to join the hub, West Midlands Urban Community Homes, as a member as well. So I'll include a link to that as well if you're interested. So look out for an email from us, and we hope to kind of hear from some of you soon. Thank you all very much for joining us today, and enjoy the sunshine. Okay, take care everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.